Welcome to the Second Bite podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite podcast. My name is Todd Taskey. I am joined today by the CEO of High Level Marketing, Scott Bell. Scott, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a great podcast, Scott. And what I hear from most people is that they love this podcast because we get the opportunity to talk to CEOs that most people have never heard of, that have accomplished something I think is remarkable, which is to build a business, create enough value in that business where somebody pays them a significant amount of money for that, 7 or 8 figures plus. And you've actually been on both sides of the transaction as both a seller and a buyer, talking to private equity, working with lenders and the rest. So we're going to dig into all of that. But before we do, I want to say thanks to our sponsor, which is the good people at Trivest. Trivest is a private equity firm out of Miami, specifically designed for founders and family-run businesses. They have been in the industry for 40 some odd years. Every year they're on the list at Inc. Magazine's most founder-friendly private equity firms. They've done over 300 transactions. They have funds for larger company buyouts, but they also focus on partnering with companies that are $1 million of EBITDA to $3 million of EBITDA that want to be a platform company. One of the things that's unusual about that. We had one of their portfolio managers on just a bit ago. So for anybody listening, if you want to go back and search for Trivest, that was an excellent episode. So thanks to the folks at Trivest, trivest.com/secondbite. They've set up a landing page for us with a bunch of information that any of the listeners can get. So with that being said, Scott, super happy to have you on the call. I'm excited to have this conversation. So in advance, thanks for being on the call with us.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so why don't we start with just a little bit of an introduction. We'll go back into your history in a second because I think that's really interesting. But tell me just a little bit, tell us, who is High Level, what do you do, and who do you serve customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So High Level Marketing is a full-service digital marketing agency. We serve small and mid-sized service-based businesses that primarily want to grow their business in a local market. So think, website design development, local SEO services, PPC, social media. So we work with a lot of different customers. We've got some, industry diversity. But at the end of the day, most of our customers, what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to grow their business and their footprint within a specific market. And that's really our expertise.
And to put it into context, give me an idea of roughly how large High Level is now, either by revenue, by employees, some metrics that will be helpful that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have over 2,000 active customers, recurring active customers. We just crossed 100 full-time team members. So I think we're at about 102 full-time team members. And annualized revenue, not including media spend, is 17 to 18 million. That's
great. Yeah, you built a great business. You're located in Birmingham, Alabama, and that's part of the story, right? Because I guess it's the predecessor to High Level is Bell Media, and the predecessor to Bell Media was an idea that you came up with in college. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went through the entrepreneurship program in college. I went to Auburn University. They had a pretty cool entrepreneurship program. Went through the business school. And as part of that program, the director of the program pretty much said, throw out your books. Everything that we're going to learn is going to be in practice. You're going to go out, you're going to do projects, you're going to do public speaking. So my senior year, I got to write a strategic plan, look at building a business plan. And I got really interested in the billboard business. My brother was already in the billboard business. He's 4 years older than I am. Worked at Lamar Outdoor Advertising, one of the biggest billboard companies in the country. But I just got really interested in that space. You started seeing the digital billboard technology pop up at that particular time. So wrote a strategic plan to start a billboard company. I started traveling to a market right outside of Auburn, learning the regulatory and the legal side of the billboard business. And before you know it, I had a few land leases and a few permits to build billboards. So when I graduated college, I was ready to take on a loan and start building billboards. And that's how we got started.
And you were 22 years old. Did people take you seriously?
You know what? I was really, really surprised at how many people took me seriously, but I think just as important, how many people wanted to give me a shot and wanted to see me succeed. Ignorance is bliss. I mean, looking back on it, going and calling on landowners that are 55, 60 years old that have been in business for 40 years, it's definitely something to laugh at now. But I didn't care. I just wanted to go out and give it a shot. I was really motivated and hungry. And I think people were able to see that. And that's probably what helped me get those first leases and permits.
That's great. And, we have a bunch of younger viewers or listeners to the podcast. So that part's a great story. Great professor, it sounds like, at Auburn. Do you remember his or her name?
Yeah. Dr. Michael Kincaid. Still stay in touch with him. A little bit about my background going into college. I purposefully chose a major where I did not have to take a public speaking class. I was just deathly afraid of it. I mean, it was just, I don't know if it was my personality profile or I had anxiety issues. I don't know. But I looked at every specialization within business and outside of business. And honestly, I chose entrepreneurship for a couple of reasons. My dad and my mom were entrepreneurs. My brother was an entrepreneur. I knew I liked that concept of kind of owning my own destiny and growing a meaningful company. But it was also because it did not require public speaking classes. That was not part of the curriculum. I was shocked the first day when I walked into Dr. Kincaid's class and he said, "Throw your books away. This is going to be about public speaking, because if you want to be a successful entrepreneur or business owner, you better get used to it." And I had a conversation with my parents. I said, "I don't think this is for me." Long story short, I had to look in the mirror and say, if I'm going to be anything in my life and in my career, I'm going to have to get over this. And I did. I probably made 40 speeches through the next 2 years in class. And it's still not my favorite thing, but I've developed a skill around that, and it's really helped me get to where I am and where I'm going with my career.
That's fantastic. And obviously it was helpful in you being successful in the billboard business. So then give me just a fast forward on the billboard business. You were growing that nicely. And so tell me kind of what you grew it to over what period of time, and then the day you got a phone call.
Yeah, so I think after 3 or 4 years of being in the billboard business, we had a couple nice plants or nice markets with coverage. I think we were up to 20 plus digital billboards. We probably had 30 or 40 traditional billboards. We were in 2 or 3 different markets, and we had a good business. The one thing about the billboard business, high regulatory hurdles, high cost of entry. It's a capital intensive business. So our growth was 100% off the backs of bank finance and debt. And there are some advantages to that business model because it is hard to get into. But we were kind of starting to hit a dead end. We grew the company to about 4 million, 5 million in annual revenue. I think we had maybe 15 to 20 full-time team members, a lot of debt.
Sorry, you're profitable at that number, 4 million?
We were profitable. We were running 20 to 25% margins. But it was interesting. We got into 3 markets, and we got into those markets and we were building billboard assets as quickly as we could. And 2 out of those 3 markets put moratoriums on billboards, meaning we couldn't build any more billboards in those markets. So we had the coverage that we had, but we couldn't expand in that market beyond what we had. So, the writing was on the wall for us. We started hearing our customers asking about digital marketing products and services. And we were already starting to think about adding digital marketing products and services to, our bag of tricks when we were approached by a financial buyer who wanted to get into the billboard business, and they wanted to use part of the acquisition of our assets to take their company public. It was just part of their grand goal. So they approached us, and we went down that path. And ultimately, 3 or 4 months after the introduction to them, we sold the billboard side of our business off and jumped headfirst into building what we're building today, which is, striving to become a leading digital marketing agency throughout the country.
And so what year was that billboard transaction?
Yeah, we closed on the billboard transaction June of 2015.
Got it. And were you already doing some digital marketing? You were about $4-ish million of billboard business. Did you have digital marketing revenue?
No, so when we sold the billboard business, we just about sold our entire business off. We were starting to dip our toe in the water for digital services. It's kind of funny to look back on it. My last office that I was in when we were moving, I was cleaning out all the junk in the office, and I found these little $250 PPC vouchers. Like that's how we started our PPC offering, is by handing out these $250 vouchers for PPC services. We've come a long way since then, but from January through June, right before we sold, that's when we were starting to offer digital services. But those services don't look today like they did back then.
And you say we a lot. Did you have a partner in the billboard business?
Yeah, I did. I actually started the company with my brother. He and I started the company. That's, why we named it Bell Media. I guess when you have 2 brothers that come together to start a company, you've got to use your last name. So he and I started it together. He was already in the billboard business. I learned so much from him, especially in those early years. And, like a lot of family businesses or sibling businesses, you realize after a period of time that being brothers is a lot more important than being business partners. So after a couple of years, he decided to exit the business. We just weren't necessarily seeing eye to eye on what we wanted to do with the business. I think we were at different places in our life stage in our career. So he moved on. He still owns another billboard company, has been hugely successful. And then came one of my close high school friends. His name's Nathan Yates. He came in, started working at the business. At that time, he bought the majority of my brother's stake out in Bell Media. So Nathan and I have been business partners for about the last 10 years, and he serves as the COO of our company today.
Got it. And so when you went through this transaction, if we can, I want to talk about you as an acquirer, but let's talk about being a seller first. Your early 20s, mid 20s, don't know a lot about transactions because you haven't done one yet. You get a knock at the door from a financial buyer. I'm assuming they're sophisticated. Take it from there and tell me what, in hindsight, you think are the biggest lessons learned from that, and maybe one mistake you wish you would have made in that process.
It was a fantastic process. It was, I would say, painful, as sometimes diligence can be if you're not prepared for it. But it was a process that has made our company today, I think, stronger, because there were so many takeaways from going through the diligence process and selling the billboard company. You referred to financial buyers. It's interesting. A couple of weeks after I was kind of going down the path with these buyers, I learned that the primary buyer, who I had spent days with educating about the business, was Warren Buffett's nephew.
Wow.
Very, very financially savvy. His business partner is incredibly financially savvy too. So they were financial buyers. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had that helped shape our company today, which is we were running our business like a small business from a financial perspective. And if we were going to get anywhere long term, we were really going to have to become more financially savvy ourselves. And that meant understanding the business at a granular level from a financial perspective, running our books the right way, because it makes such an impact, not only if you're going through diligence, but just running your business day to day. That was one of the biggest areas of impact that I took from that whole process. The other is it's a heavy lift. I mean, if someone is looking to pay millions of dollars to buy your business, they're going to want to know everything there is to know about the business. So I think it's just knowing that process takes time. You've got to build a relationship through that process. The other thing is the importance of having brokers that can help bridge the gap and help to even strengthen that relationship between the buyer and seller. I think all of those are things that have translated into what we're doing here at High Level Marketing.
That's great. Thank you. And on a personal note, so again, you're mid-20s, you got probably not enough money to retire for the rest of your life, but you got a good chunk of money, right, at a young age. How did that change, right, or did it impact your perspective at all on what you were going to do next and who you were as an entrepreneur?
I think that there's a long history of young entrepreneurs who have sold their first company and have used that as a springboard to start something bigger and better. And that was absolutely my mindset the entire time. A lot of the dollars that were made from that transaction, we left in the company. And what that allowed us to do is to start our business and essentially a startup with capital on the balance sheet, which makes a huge difference in the trajectory of your next venture. So what were we able to do? Well, we had the dollars to invest in people. We had the dollars to do some things right, to have the right platforms to run our business. So that's really where we started. When we sold the billboard company, we didn't lose team members, although some of those team members that worked with us stayed with the billboard company. We actually, I think, grew our headcount by 30 or 40% the month that we sold the billboard company, even though the revenue wasn't there to support it. And what we were doing is we were hiring people that were committed to the industry, had industry expertise. Some of them were leaders or people that were capable of doing things that we had not been able to afford previously. And when you do that, it really is. It's a launching pad for doing things faster and in a more meaningful way.
That's helpful. Thanks. And then, so now let's move on, because in March of 2021, Bell Media acquired High Level Marketing and then changed the name to High Level Marketing. But you were the acquirer there. Now, you and I had met beforehand and actually looked at a couple of other things where another financial buyer, a private equity firm, was going to acquire Bell Media. So do you remember, A, do you remember how we met? And B, what do you most remember from the entire process?
Yeah, I remember how we met. I think you just made a cold call, Todd. I think you're just cold calling, and I think you got me.
Much more sophisticated LinkedIn email is most likely. But yes,
okay.
I do remember knocking on your door with a tremendous idea that I wanted to share with you. And you were good enough to.
Absolutely. Groundbreaking idea. Yeah, so I think that's right. And then we had a phone call. And I think the sentiment of that call, if I remember correctly, was that first and foremost, I really love what we're doing here at the company. I love our team. I love the services that we provide, the space, as well as serving our clients. So I'm not looking to get out of that. And I think your sentiment was, well, what if I could introduce you to some people that may allow you to continue to do that, but could also escalate and accelerate the growth of the business. And I said, well, if those opportunities exist, I would love to entertain them. So you introduced us to a private equity firm. The goal of that private equity firm, and they did make an offer to own a percentage of the company, but the private equity firm's focus on acquiring part of our business was to accelerate the growth of our business, to become a platform company, to start buying other agencies and grow faster organically. And that was really the driver behind, I think, that first discussion. And we actually got pretty far along with them. We recognized that maybe we weren't necessarily the right fit for each other as the private equity group and our company. And the timing was weird too. It was going into the second quarter of 2020. And that's when a lot of things kind of went off the rails. So that was our introduction, and there was a lot of learnings through that process as well.
Yeah, so let's unpack that just a little bit, because I think it's important. So Q2 of 2020 was middle of COVID, and you guys, like most in the digital marketing, had short-term and short-lived pain, right? Just for a couple of months, and you came out of that quite well. The private equity group, which is a good private equity group out of California, actually came to visit you, made a thoughtful offer. We went back and forth a couple of times and got really actually quite close. And we were the part we could not close on or close the gap on was the amount of cash at close. And as I remember it, you said, the only way we're going to do this is if we come away with X amount at close. And they were roughly $1 million-ish short of that. And they moved a little bit to make it, several $100,000 short. But you kept firm to that. And so my question now in hindsight is, was it because of the dollar amount was so important? Or was it a combination of dollar amount, fit with the group, timing, or was there some other consideration, or all of the above?
No, that's exactly right. It was not that. It was not the cash at close. I mean, I think, any company has some type of, financial request and some type of line in the sand, right? You've got to consider that in terms of the true enterprise value of a company. I think it was some of the intangible aspects that we weren't necessarily getting from them. Was it the right fit? Did they have the team and the resources to be able to support us like we wanted to be supported? Were they willing to put some dollars on the line for growth capital and have some type of cash commitment that we could then take to grow the company in a really significant way? What we weren't looking for was a financial buyer who was looking to acquire and help us just maintain longevity and success. We were looking for someone that could come in and help the board make the best decisions, put some capital on the line that could show us what that growth trajectory from an acquisition perspective could be. So it was some of those aspects that I felt were missing in that relationship, that maybe the financial aspect is something that we leaned in on during that process. But there were other things that were at play that were an indicator. And again, in hindsight, an indicator. They weren't necessarily the right partners for us based on where we wanted to go with the company.
Yeah, so I'll share a couple of things, and it gives people a little bit of a view of the way we work and perhaps other advisors work. So I spend a lot of my time having conversations with entrepreneurs, but also with investors, right? Private equity groups, strategic companies looking to do things. We spend lots of time doing that. So this group I had spoken to a couple of times, they really wanted to be in digital marketing, but they want to be in digital marketing focused on the SMB space, small, medium-sized business space. And I said to them, geez, you know what? I got a guy who's down in Alabama. He's got a really good business, and you should talk to him, because I've got another guy who's up in Michigan, and they fit like this. the guy in Michigan doesn't have great sales, but he's got great technology. He's got strengths in areas where these guys have weaknesses and vice versa. So as I told those guys, they're smaller. Let's talk to the guy in Alabama, see if that works. And we had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 conversations, whatever we did. And in one of those conversations, I shared with you my master plan of, the group that's in Michigan. The group in Michigan is high level marketing, right? And so you and I had talked about that. And this is the reason why I wanted to bring the private equity group on board, because then you, Scott, and Nathan would have enough capital where we can go talk to the guys at high level marketing and acquire that business. And you liked the idea because it fit in with your objectives. The financial partner didn't quite fit. So that just didn't happen, right? We got close, didn't quite happen. And I don't know if it was a week, maybe it was 2, maybe it was just a weekend. But then you had called me back and said, I think we can do this on our own. Do you remember it that way? And do you remember kind of what your thinking was when you wanted to approach high level marketing?
Yeah, I think at that point, I had heard a lot about the organization, and I think that I heard a lot of good stuff, a lot of strength of what they had to offer, strength in their team. For us, it gave us a little bit of geographic diversity since all of our business was primarily in the Southeast, and they serve the same customer base that we do. I mean, it's amazing the similarities in the customer base and segments that they served compared to ours. So it seemed to be that there was some type of, synergy that could happen between the organizations. And we've got a pretty strong balance sheet. We're a profitable company. And I, in some ways understand how banks think through that process. So yeah, we I think we connected, and I said, I can see if I can do this on my own. Let's make the introduction and let's see if there's something there.
And so this is the part I was hoping we could spend a little time on, because most of the listeners here have a business, have an agency, whatever the case may be. The secret behind the scene question is, what is it, other than the strategic fit, what are some of the little maybe nuanced things that a buyer looks for that you recognize now that you've done an acquisition and may do others, that's different from what you thought about when you were a seller of the billboard business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are quite a few items. In terms of finding the right fit, I think that there's different types of sellers. You have sellers that just want to get out of the business, and that criteria for buying that business is maybe going to look a little bit different than if you're looking at a potential seller like the co-founders of High Level Marketing, who wanted to sell a portion of their business, but they also wanted to stay on and be a part of something a whole lot bigger. So in that regard, what I was looking for more than anything is the relationship aspect of it. It's like if you're buying a company and those guys are going to stay on board in some capacity, whether ownership or not, you really want to make sure that you have a shared vision. You really want to make sure that you want to get to the same place over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and that you can build a trusting relationship with those folks. So in that regard, with High Level Marketing and John and Wes, the guys that started that company, they're now still a part of the company. They have an ownership stake in the combined entity. But we started forming a really good and trusting relationship right in the beginning that makes it almost impossible to create longevity there if you can't have that connection and that mutual respect right in the beginning. The other aspect are the mechanics of the business. Are they serving the same types of customers? Do we want to stay in our lane in terms of our strategic direction? What are the pieces of their business that complement the pieces of our business, and how do they pull together to create a stronger foundation for long-term success? And then I think the other piece that I'm always looking for, what does the team look like? What's the structure of the team? What's the org chart look like? How do you service the clients with the team? And what I found, early on, looking at and speaking with Wes and John about the team at High Level Marketing, is that they're amazing people that are committed to the company, committed to the cause, committed to client success. And Bell Media's side, we had the same thing. So although there are cultural differences, I think at the core of what we were doing, bringing these companies together, we really had a shared philosophy, which is client first. And our team is fully committed to that. And you can bridge a lot of gaps when you have that same mindset.
And is there something you would advise any seller to make sure they are focused on that any buyer is going to want to see from an operational standpoint or a financial standpoint or a delivery standpoint, anything like that?
Yeah, if you're running your business as a cash basis business, move that to accrual basis. That's going to make the journey a little bit easier for everybody.
Hold the pause button there for a second. The difference between cash and accrual, your accountant, who's ever listening, can tell you. If you run your business on accrual, you do not have to be an accrual base. You can still be a cash-based taxpayer and still take advantage of all the things that you have been taking advantages from a tax planning standpoint, and still run your books on accrual. Just a little side note. Please continue, Scott.
Yeah, and I laugh about it, but look, it's more common than not. Most small business owners are running their business, cash in, cash out. It just makes it a little bit more complex to reconcile that when most buyers are going to want to see some type of accrual base. So that's kind of a big one. The other thing that I've learned going through the process, whether you're a buyer or a seller, is spend the time during the LOI phase, making sure that you're hammering through a lot of the fine details of the deal. It makes that whole diligence journey and getting to the close just a little bit easier. But I think the other thing for a seller is really determining what you want out of the deal. If you're able to articulate what you want out of a deal, I think it makes that transaction that much more easy. And that could be, you want to sell 100% of the company, or, you want to sell 70% of the company and have rollover equity because you're still young and hungry and you want to do something really meaningful working with a bigger company. If you have that type of mindset, I think it just makes structuring the deal and going through diligence that much easier.
And in looking back, is there anything that you wish you would have spent more time on learning about High Level before acquisition?
That's a great question. I think that we did a pretty thoughtful job during diligence. We didn't do it all ourselves, and I think that's an important piece as well. What my primary focus during diligence was really better understanding the org chart and, how our teams could potentially fit together, what might need to be shifted or reorganized, and building relationships. Like, the CEO of High Level Marketing, before we acquired them, he and I spent a lot of time just talking. Diligence can be a challenging time, and there are friction points. So we spent a lot of time just continuing to get to know each other's business a little bit more. But we also relied on financial partners to do some of the financial diligence and the Q of E. So I think we had a pretty good gauge on the organization. I think you could always do a little bit of a better job, but looking back on it, in hindsight, 5 or 6 months, I think it was a great decision. I think we've had a lot of success, and there haven't been that many surprises, which is different than, a couple of the acquisitions that I did prior to High Level Marketing.
Right. And so the business sure seems like it's clicking, right? You're growing nicely. You've integrated the teams. You've done all those kind of things. Are you thinking about additional acquisition? And if so, do you think about expanding your capability set or expanding your geography? Is there a priority list that you've developed?
So we are absolutely looking for additional acquisitions. We actually, went through the pre-diligence process, made an offer, and unfortunately lost out on that offer. We were informed of that last week, but there are others in the pipeline. So we're gonna continue to execute for the long term our build and buy strategy. We want to grow at 10 to 15% organic growth year over year. And we want to accelerate our growth capabilities through, bolt-on strategic acquisitions. Who are we looking for? We're not necessarily looking to expand our product and service offering. I think we're pretty dialed in there. But what we would like to look at, more geographic diversity, potentially more offices to give us more coverage, serving a very similar type of business that we are. And also maybe some industry expertise. We offer services to a lot of different industries, so we work with a lot of different types of businesses. But there are a few categories that make up the majority of our revenue, like healthcare marketing, medical practices, home services contractors, property managers. So there are a few categories that make up the bulk of our revenue. If we could find other acquisition targets that have some industry focus serving the same type of business, that would always be of interest to us as well.
Like, as an example, somebody that does dentistry, somebody that does roofing, something like that?
Exactly.
Got it. So you haven't taken on any outside private equity capital. Typically, when you do that, it kind of starts the clock running, right? Because private equity needs to get out of their investment in 4 to 6 or 7 years, something like that. How do you think about, this podcast obviously is Second Bite podcast. I'm sure Wes and John are wondering about the timing of their second bite. What's the game plan for High Level in terms of a second exit or something of that nature?
Yeah, so at the current time, really not thinking about it. I share this with our team. Our primary focus is to just build a really great business. And if private equity or some other type of outsource or outside capital presents an opportunity or is a requirement for us to take a huge leap with the organization, then we'll consider it, like we're going to consider a lot of options in growing our business. Right now, though, we're working towards our 10-year plan. We want to be over $100 million in annual revenue over the next 10 years. And what that's going to mean for us is that we're going to have to stay consistent. We're going to have to stay focused, strengthen our core products and service offering, continue to build a great team. And again, I think it's being a little bit more opportunistic. You never know when a fantastic competing or non-competing digital agency goes for sale, and then we'll have to make the decision. Is it the right strategic fit for us? If it is, can we fund it on our own, or are we going to have to look for some type of partnership to make it happen? But I'm just focused on continuing to build a great company with great people, offering opportunities for team members to grow in their skill set and compensation and growth trajectory track. So it's really not part of our strategy right now. But when you build a great company, you know that there are also options, which gives you some freedom as well.
Sure. And then how would somebody reach out to you? Somebody that is actually, I'll make it a two-part question. It might sound a little self-serving, but if somebody has an entity and they think it would be an interesting fit for High Level, is it better for them to reach out to you directly? And I know you're always gracious in terms of reaching back to me and responding to me, but I know that you're a lot more difficult to get today than you were a couple of years ago when we first connected. Any thoughts on how kind of deal flow gets to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can reach out. I think the challenge is what you said. It's time, but it's also a lot of distraction. Like, you'd be surprised how many people reach out through email or LinkedIn, and oftentimes those messages just either get lost or it's just perceived as spam, or all the communication it can become a distraction. So You could always reach out to me through LinkedIn, but I would also say, Todd, you and I have worked together. Reach out to Todd, reach out to a broker. I'm not going to want to go down the path of making an acquisition without having someone like Todd support the deal. There are so many advantages in having that support, because at the end of the day, I think that there's a shared goal in mind, which is to get a good deal done that can help take the acquiring business to the next level. So I think it's always good to maybe leverage some brokerage relationships like Todd to do so.
Yeah, and specifically in this case, I know that if I were to call you with an opportunity, I can anticipate your 3 or 4 first questions, and we'll have those prepared and ready in the way that you would want to see them, so that you can either say yes or no pretty quickly, which is part of the reason why I know you continue to take my calls and respond to my emails. So let me wrap us up with this, if I can, as I typically do. You have been very successful in your business life, in your personal life. You've got a young family. That's great. Is there, beyond Professor Kincaid, who had obviously an impact on you, is there anything that you would point to, whether it's a book, an experience, an individual that's had kind of a lasting that you carry forward with you that you think is responsible in one way or another for the level of success you've had?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think for me, I don't feel like I've, gotten to where I've wanted to go. I think there's a lot more that I need to learn, a lot more that I want to do before I can say that I've been successful. But I think, becoming an entrepreneur, it's not for everyone. So if I can contribute that entrepreneurship and drive and determination to a few things, I would say first and foremost, it's, some of what I grew up with. My dad was an entrepreneur. He owned a small business. He worked his tail off. My mom's the same way. She had a private practice. She worked tons of hours. And then as I was going through the entrepreneurship program, my brother started a business. So when you think about growing up in that environment, then I think it makes it that much easier to just feel like, you know what, I'm going to take a leap. I'm going to take a chance. Everyone around me is doing it. So I might as well. I think in terms of, books and things that I used, I think Good to Great and Built to Last, for me early on, those made the biggest impact. I was the guy that, like a lot of entrepreneurs, you like to bounce from one thing to the other, the shiny thing. And what those books started to instill in me early on is focus can become a competitive advantage. And that's really what we're doing here at High Level Marketing right now, is staying focused on what we're doing and staying determined in that long-term vision and who we're serving. And I think the other thing, and Todd, you probably don't even know this, but I cannot talk about the diligence and the discipline that I try to keep each and every day without also mentioning that I was born with cystic fibrosis. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So I've got cystic fibrosis. It's a very, very serious lung disease. The average life expectancy of someone with cystic fibrosis is 40 years old. And I've been told from the very beginning, when I was born, my life expectancy was 18 years. When I was 18, it was 32. So I have had to every day do hours of physical therapy and medications and go through that, psychological balance that I think anybody in that position has to go through. And that has really shaped who I am and how I think about each and every day.
Wow, that is a great share and a great way to end our episode. It was great having you on, Scott. I appreciate you and the honesty that you shared with. So thank you for that. We will keep our eye on High Level Marketing. I will hopefully have the opportunity to work with you again as you become a national brand and head towards 100 million of revenue. So congratulations to both you and Nathan on your success, and thanks for spending time with us today.
All right, Todd. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate everything.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.